The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Canucks fans have already been punched in the mouth all season long, but this sucker punch, this one was inexcusable, man.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks and also a Canucks writer currently with Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into the show, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks because this is your Canucks every damn day. Even when they're eliminated from the playoffs, we still got your back both today, tomorrow, and all throughout the offseason, baby. So we're not here without you listening. If you like what we're doing, you can follow the show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Saturday night, it was a microcosm of the Canucks season, right? They build an early lead, they blow that lead, and they lose in overtime. I mean, what is more Canuck than what just happened on Saturday night? But the main thing that happened on Saturday night that should have Canuck fans sick to their stomach was the despicable act pulled by Yakov Trenin of the Minnesota Wild. And the big question, how in the hell did this guy not get a suspension? This is one of the dirtiest plays I've ever seen in an NHL game. So why didn't the NHL suspend Yakov Trenin? I think that is the key point that I'm taking away from this weekend of Canucks hockey, because look, this has been a season where the Canucks have been, like I said, punched in the face in a number of different ways, both, with the infighting on this team, the injuries that have piled up on this team, everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong for the Canucks this season. But we want to talk about one of the low-key feel-good stories this season, and it has been the play of Derek Forbort, who I think many were just kind of calling the seventh defenseman. Maybe guys writing this player off. The Boston Bruins fans were not saying nice things about Derek Forbort as he exited their team and joined the Canucks in free agency. But for the most part, Derek Forbort has been, he's been a fill-in top four guy at times this season. He's helped the Canucks have one of the best penalty kills in the NHL. He's also dropped the mitts a few times this season as well. Not something that I think has gone terribly well for him. I think of him getting his ass handed to him by Ryan Lomberg when the Canucks and Flames played on New Year's Eve. But what happened to Derek Forbort on Saturday night never should have happened. And again, Yakov Trenin, he gets assessed a game misconduct at the time, but no supplemental discipline coming from the little rat playing for the Minnesota Wild. And Daniel Wagner had an interesting column about this in his blog, Pass It to Bulls, about why Yakov Trenin didn't get suspended. And it can relate to the NHL rules around fighting and being an aggressor in the fight. And typically, if you're an aggressor for 3 fights, then you get your suspension and blah, blah, blah. Look, throw the rule book out in this situation, because what have we seen the Department of Player Safety do over the years? If there is a dirty play out there, make an example of it so that it doesn't happen again. This has been a bad week for the NHL in terms of, fighting and injuries that could happen. And look, the Jalen Chatfield slam on Connor McMichael of the Washington Capitals. I mean, that was something that could have been really dangerous play. And of course, McMichael avoided serious injury there. But on this one, Derek Forbort does not avoid serious injury, breaking his face. Yakov Trenin literally broke this guy's face and didn't face any supplemental discipline. And look, you look at pundits across the league right now, fans commenting on shows across the NHL. I think everyone agrees this was a dirty play. So why the hell wasn't he suspended? You can look at, even in terms of NHL history recently, you can look at Ryan Hartman in the Minnesota Wild. Look at what Ryan Hartman did to Tim Stützle, barely over a month ago now, back in February, where he's taken a face-off against Tim Stützle of the Ottawa Senators, if you haven't seen it. And Tim Stützle falls to the ice, and Ryan Hartman kind of falls to the ice and drives his elbow into Tim Stützle's head, injuring him on the play as well. Luckily, Stützle avoided serious injury, but in that play, Ryan Hartman got a 10-game suspension. a 10-game suspension, which was later reduced to 8 games. Of course, Ryan Hartman, a repeat offender, that was part of the equation there. But if you look at what Hartman did to Tim Stützle, and you look at what Yakov Trenin did to Derek Forbort, you could argue that Yakov Trenin had even more time to let up and avoid seriously injuring a player the way he did on Saturday night. You know, Ryan Hartman's a dirty player, but maybe there's something dirty in the water in Minnesota, man. Unbelievable. Just shout out to people from Minnesota. I guess you guys are all right. But Yakov Trenin, we saw it in the replay, right? The guy, Derek Forbort, falls to the ice. Yakov Trenin has time to reload. He even puts his fist on the ice, pushes back up, and then drives Forbort's head into the ice. It was one of the most disgusting things I've seen in a hockey game. And I know you guys listening out there over the age of 55 will say, yeah, that happened all the time in the 70s and 80s. But in today's NHL, there's no way that should be happening in an NHL game. And you kind of wish the NHL would take headshots and head injuries a little bit more seriously. You know, there was a news article earlier today that talked about Chris Simon, rest in peace, former NHL enforcer, had CTE, stage 3 CTE when he passed away. And here we are in an NHL fight. A dude's head gets driven into the ice so hard that he breaks an orbital bone in his face. He's clearly in some discomfort. He's down for a while on the ice. And you decide, nah, that play's not suspension worthy. I can think of almost every other NHL suspension this season. You know, look at the Connor Zary elbow on Elias Pettersson. Things that happen in real time, they happen quick, and they end up being suspensions still. I can't for the life of me figure out why the NHL decided that this play by Yakov Trenin was not suspension worthy. For Canucks fans, you could call it one last kick in the teeth here before the season ends. And, you know, one love to Derek Forbort. He may or may not be back with his team, but you hope for the sake of his health that he's going to be okay moving forward, whether that is with the Vancouver Canucks or another NHL team. Because come on, man, we've seen it with the Canucks this season, the head injuries. One love to Filip Chytil. We're going to be talking about him next on the second segment here of Locked On Canucks. Canucks don't need any more head injuries, head trauma among their players, especially one that was as avoidable as a situation with Yakov Trenin recently. And look, last shot of the NHL here, but this isn't the first time that they've done the Canucks dirty. Look, they've done the Canucks dirty through a lot of their history, but even over the past month, the Jason Dickinson hit, the Yakov Trenin punch to Derek Forbort's head, both plays that should have been suspensions. Are you trying to protect players in this game? Like, it seems like the NHL Department of Player Safety they pick and choose their spots. I mean, Daniel Wagner had his article about the rule book and why Trenin didn't get suspended. It seems like they're not even following the rule book on a lot of occasions. They're acting off of emotion and instinct, and that's not what you want to see from a department that, oh yeah, is supposed to be prioritizing player safety. That is their goal. That's their name. And here they are letting players get concussed and doing nothing about it. It's hard to know what's going on with the NHL sometimes. And George Parros, he's been up there for a long time. Maybe it's time for a replacement there, the Department of Player Safety, because it seems like a broken system over there at the NHL head office right now. And just Canucks luck that when a player should be suspended, the league says, nah, let this guy play. Again, a frustrating season for the Vancouver Canucks, but let me know in the comments. Do you believe Yakov Trenin should have been suspended? Of course. What do you mean? Let me know in the comments. Of course, he should have been suspended. I don't know if there's a single Canuck fan out there that thinks Yakov Trenin should have been, should be avoiding any suspension right now. But, you know, maybe it doesn't matter because Yakov Trenin, maybe it's more of a punishment for the Minnesota Wild to keep him in the lineup anyways. The dude has not lived up to expectations after signing a 4-year deal with the Minnesota Wild this offseason. So one love to Derek Forbort and one love as well to Filip Chytil, who surprisingly makes his return at Canucks practice. So let's dive into some news and notes about your Vancouver Canucks, specifically Filip Chytil, and can he still be the second line center of the Canucks future? You're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. We'll be back on the other side after showing it our friends over at Upwork. Listeners of the show here on Locked On Canucks, you know that for about a couple weeks now, I've been without my co-host, Kyle Bowen. And, man, oh, man, maybe I'm looking for that new co-host, okay? And, if you're not wanting to do this full-time, it's okay. I don't do this full-time either, okay? You could post on Upwork and, find your next opportunity that way, right? And if you're a business like Locked On Canucks, you need to find that person. You got to use Upwork, okay? Because with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. And if you need help on your podcast, like you're on Locked On Canucks, you know that when I'm finishing the show today and I post the audio, I'm going to be going to Upwork because Kyle Bowen, I got an update from him, and I'm not sure if it's an update about him coming back on Locked On Canucks or not. But find out on the other side. But for now, if you're in the freelance world, whether you're a business or you're a freelancer, visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's on upwork.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. We're back here on Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. And there's only 2 games left in this season for the Vancouver Canucks, which has been one of the most disappointing that we've seen in quite some time. I mean, man, oh man, I wake up covering this team, and sometimes I feel like I've been punched in the face. And hopefully, when you turn into Locked On Canucks, hopefully it doesn't feel like a punch in the face. Hopefully it feels like a nice, cool bag of ice, a nice, cold beer, a nice bag of frozen peas on your face to help you get over what has been a very trying season for your Vancouver Canucks. But there's been hope throughout certain parts of the season, and one thing that gave Canuck fans hope was the early play of Filip Chytil. This guy came in here, and sure, the points didn't really materialize. He only has 2 goals and 4 points in 6 games. But what he did bring was some excitement to the Vancouver Canucks lineup. He looked like one of the most dynamic players on this team as soon as he stepped foot onto the ice for the Vancouver Canucks. Of course, Elias Pettersson was struggling immensely at the time, and Filip Chytil ends up playing upwards of 20 minutes a night, something he had never done in his NHL career, and he deserved those minutes too. And look, of course, he's not a perfect player. There's a reason he's not a superstar. But I do think that long-term, Filip Chytil could, I say could, of course, a lot of question marks, but he could still be a viable second-line center candidate for this team. And quickly before I get into that, for those who missed it, Filip Chytil back at Canucks practice in a non-contact red jersey. He's not going to play again this season, but just the fact that he's practicing and already trying to ramp up is a really good sign for both the Vancouver Canucks and especially Filip Chytil. Of course, what matters first and foremost is the dude's health, but we all know he was a main piece of that JT Miller trade coming back to Vancouver. A guy who had been, cast as the Rangers' third-line center for a long time, but a guy with potential to be a second-line center in the NHL. And I still have belief that Filip Chytil can be that guy for the Vancouver Canucks moving forward for a couple of reasons. And first, let's just look at the raw numbers from Filip Chytil. Over the past 5 seasons in the NHL, Filip Chytil has scored at a second-line rate or better in 4 of the past 5 seasons, I should say. So, you look at the stats in 2020-21, he had 2.6 points per 60. That's a first-line rate. 22-23, he had 2.25 points per 60. That is also a first-line rate. Again, he's doing this while playing third-line minutes for your New York Rangers, but still a guy that was making the most of his minutes. And then, of course, in 23-24, he's limited to just 10 games because of concussions, still scoring at a second-line rate. And then this season, scored at a second-line rate as well in games between the New York Rangers and Vancouver Canucks. And look, I think we all want that, that young 23, 24-year-old center who's going to pop in here and be an immediate top 6 guy, but that's not the case for a lot of teams around the NHL. A lot of teams around the NHL do acquire guys like Filip Chytil and hope that he can be a second-line center, because the Canucks did buy a guy who is still young, right? He's still 25 years old, 26 later this year, and a guy who in his limited minutes has scored at a top 6 rate. So you're betting on the upside there with Filip Chytil. And just look at some other contenders right now in the NHL and in terms of their second-line centers. Let's look at some teams that have some question marks there right now, or guys that acquired guys recently to alleviate those question marks. So I think the Winnipeg Jets stand out first and foremost. I mean, they've got Vlad Nemesnikov as their second line center. He isn't your typical second line center on a contender. Adam Lowry, I guess, would be their third line center, but they play pretty even minutes. The Colorado Avalanche had Casey Middlestat as their second line center for most of the season, yet they remained in the race. They've upgraded now with Brock Nelson there. I look at the Florida Panthers too, and everyone's talking a big game about Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett, I think he'll be a darling of the offseason. He's going to get paid, likely in Florida, but perhaps somewhere else, maybe Vancouver. He's a good second line center, but he's also a guy that's never really hit over 50 points in a season. So it's not like he's an Austin Matthews, John Tavares type of dynamic there, or a McDavid Draisaitl dynamic. Not every team has that. But the Panthers with Sam Bennett, he's been fine as a second line center because he brings those intangibles, but not really, again, a guy who is maybe a second line center. I mean, you might look at a guy like Sam Bennett and think, oh, on a good team, he's a third line center. And we might still be having that talk if the Florida Panthers didn't win the Stanley Cup. But the guy's been pretty darn good there in a second line center role. And of course, a guy that elevates in the playoffs. I look at the Golden Knights as well. Tomas Hertl, who they acquired at the trade deadline last season. He's filled a gap there for them, especially with, guys walking out the door there. William Karlsson taking a step back. And finally, I look at the Carolina Hurricanes, who basically still have Jordan Staal as their second line center. Of course, that was a role they were hoping that Jesperi Kotkaniemi could grow into. But he's still, behind Jordan Staal in terms of the minutes and the faceoffs there in Carolina, although not by much. So the fact of the matter is, not every NHL team has this bona fide second line center who is going to help them win the Stanley Cup. It just doesn't happen for every NHL team. And, look, even with some teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins is a lazy example with Malkin and Crosby, but, in their latter years, they've, I think everyone would argue they're still top 6 centers, even a couple of seasons ago, but that wasn't necessarily enough to get them over the hump. So you look at the Vancouver Canucks right now, and I do think there's a chance. I'm not saying this is maybe the best thing to do, but it might be based on prices out there. I think there's a chance that they go into the season with Pettersson and Chytil as their top 2 centers, with Pius Suter as the potential fill-in for Filip Chytil, if Filip Chytil is not healthy, or just have Suter there as insurance. And then you have Atu Ratu and Teddy Bluger as your bottom 6 centers. And Suter, of course, can play there as well in a pinch. Let me know in the comments how you would feel about that as a Canucks fan, because I think most of you are thinking, oh, here we go. Same old, same old. The Vancouver Canucks team didn't improve their center position after missing the playoffs last season. But I think you are banking on, look, the Canucks' future completely hinges on Elias Pettersson and whether or not he can bounce back. But if he sticks around, you got to think that he's your number 1 center. He's got to be your number 1 center if you have any hope of winning the Stanley Cup. And with Filip Chytil, I think he showed you enough in limited minutes where he could be a viable second-line center for this team as long as he can stay healthy. And then you're kind of hoping and praying that he does stay healthy and that Pius Suter can fill in that role. And part of the reason I mentioned that this could be a strategy for the Vancouver Canucks is because if you look at the offseason roadmap, which we'll get into, I'm not sure there is this crazy obvious path forward in terms of how the Canucks improve their center ice position. Like, we'll get into some past trades, the free agents as well. But man, oh man, it can be kind of slim pickings out there on the free agent market and the trade market for that matter, right? Like, you're either signing a Mikael Granlund or you're, trading a first and Willander to get the center. Even then, we'll go through the list of some of the top 6 centers in the NHL this offseason, but I'm not sure if there is a perfect match for the Vancouver Canucks, which leads me to believe that Filip Chytil and Elias Pettersson could be the Vancouver Canucks top centers on opening night next season. And yeah, Canucks fans, I'm curious how you feel about that, because it's a risk. But so is paying a boatload of assets to trade for a guy on the trade market, and so is signing a guy in free agency to a massive contract. I mean, you got to take risk in order to succeed. You can't just sit with your thumb up your ass and hope things are going to improve. But man, oh man, I wonder if that's the Canucks, what the Canucks might just do here. So you heard it here first on Locked On Canucks. The Canucks may sit around with their thumb up their rear end and just hope things improve with Elias Pettersson and the health of Filip Chytil next season. But again, one love to Filip Chytil, who looks like he should be ready to rock and roll heading into next season, which is huge news for the Vancouver Canucks because, of course, in the last week or two, we're wondering if this guy's going to play again after suffering his 5th diagnosed concussion at the NHL level. Let's get to break here, and we'll wrap up on the other side with some of the news and notes regarding your Vancouver Canucks, including talking about another pair of debuts for your Vancouver Canucks tonight as they take on the San Jose Sharks. You're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. We'll be back on the other side after talking about these nuts, baby. This is nuts. This is absolutely nuts because, man, oh man, there's nothing more I like to do than to shove these nuts in my mouth, baby. And these are the nuts from Wonderful Pistachios. So if you're looking for the snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. And personally, I love the no shells variety because give me the no tease variety, baby. I don't want the tease. I want to crack the bag open and pop those nuts in my mouth. And if you do like the tease, the in-shell options are also a classic favorite. So whether you like the naked nuts or you like the teas, make sure that you get the nuts from Wonderful Pistachios. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. We're back here on Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. Even when, the Canucks, like I said, it's the death march, baby. But it's not the death march because, player stories still matter, right? These are still human beings on the ice. The NHL isn't being played by robots yet, although, man, oh man. Sometimes I wonder after I saw a robot cutting someone's grass the other day. Maybe we'll see robots in the NHL soon. But for now, it is still human beings. And 2 human beings are going to make their NHL debut tonight for the Vancouver Canucks. Let's touch on it here, baby. As the Canucks wrap up their season, they're going to see 2 new players step into the lineup tonight. One of them will be goaltender Nikita Tolopilo. And, it's been an interesting season for Nikita Tolopilo, who as of late has been helping his team, put up some big numbers in terms of the Abbotsford Canucks 13-game winning streak there. And of course, Ty Young was a part of that. Artur Shilovs was a part of that as well. But a shout out to the big Belarusian for getting to play his first NHL game tonight against the San Jose Sharks. It does look like that's what's going to happen tonight. And again, looking at Nikita Tolopilo's numbers, he's taken a bit of a dip since last season, although he has had to be the guy for this Abbotsford Canucks team. So, it's interesting looking at the Abbotsford Canucks. They're less veteran-laden than they were last season. They had a new coach, so, there's been some adjustments to the structure there. But this has been a team that has, easily surpassed expectations so far this season. But it does seem like Nikita Tolopilo, if you kind of look at his game log and if you follow this team this season, he's had nights where he's, posted a shutout and he's been great, or he's let in just maybe a goal. He's also had nights where he's let in like 7 goals. So it's been very up and down with Nikita Tolopilo this season. It's ended with him having a .901 save percentage so far in the AHL this season. But of course, we've seen bodies come up and down from Abbotsford all season long. Thank God the AHL affiliate is in beautiful Abbotsford, baby. But it's hard not to argue that Nikita Tolopilo hasn't at least somewhat earned this recall. Of course, we wouldn't be in this position if the Canucks were out of the playoffs. But shout out to Nikita Tolopilo for earning the opportunity to play his first NHL game here tonight for your Vancouver Canucks. Now, Nikita Tolopilo, I'm not going to say he's really part of the long-term plans of the Vancouver Canucks, but this guy, he might be, and it's Kirill Kudryavtsev, the thick-necked left shot, 5'11", 200-pound defenseman for your Vancouver Canucks, selected in the 7th round of the 2022 NHL draft. He will suit up for your Vancouver Canucks tonight. It'll make him the first 7th rounder from 2022 to play in an NHL game, and really only the second player from the last 2 rounds of that draft play an NHL game, with Maximilian Susber playing for the Utah Hockey Club as well. Kirill Kudryavtsev has just been beyond impressive this season for the Abbotsford Canucks, playing in all situations, getting some power play time as well. He's had to step up too with, guys like DPD being out of the lineup. Didi, and you look at this season as well. I mean, a guy like Christian Wolanin was a healthy scratch early on because guys like Kirill Kudryavtsev, who also plays the left side, was playing so well. So I'm excited to see what he looks like at the NHL level. He's, again, got a pretty thick build. Again, 5'11", 200 pounds. He's a thick boy. Maybe not Elias Pettersson thick, but still a guy who's a solid player for this team. And perhaps a bit of a showcase too, because we all know the Vancouver Canucks, they do need to improve this forward group this offseason. And one way to do so would be trading a guy like Kirill Kudryavtsev. So you got to say it doesn't hurt for this Vancouver Canucks team to get a player like that into the lineup. He mentioned when he talked to reporters today that Elias Pettersson is one of his best friends in general and they've obviously played together in Abbotsford this season. So nice to see a couple homies suit up for the Vancouver Canucks. Let's see what they can do tonight against the San Jose Sharks team, who is also battling injury this time of year. This is not a marquee matchup by any means. I know Canucks fans, they just want to see the team maybe lose right now, or let me know in the comments. Do you want to see the Canucks lose right now? Is this actually a mentality from the team? Do we care about drafting 14th instead of 15th? Does it really matter? Or are you just feeling like, put on a show? This is hockey. Give me something to cheer about. Because I'm leaning towards the latter. This isn't a case where the Canucks could fall and, have a draft in the top 10. Like, this isn't the case right now. Let me just see a Canucks team that puts forth a good effort tonight. I thought Linus Karlsson was probably the best Canuck against the Minnesota Wild on Saturday night. Shout out to Ty Mueller as well. He made his debut for the Canucks on Saturday night against the Wild. And he's a great story too. Again, he talked about that. Was that the 2022 draft for Ty Mueller? 2023 for Ty Mueller, I believe. So, look, you've seen some Canucks players come in here in the last couple of years. Looks like the amateur scouting side has been better for this team, right? So you got to give the Canucks some credit here as well. And Ty Mueller has developed into an all situations player for your Vancouver Canucks, or for the Abbotsford Canucks, I should say. And hey, maybe some of these guys start picking up some milestones, their first points and whatnot for the Vancouver Canucks tonight as well. One other low-key storyline is Quinn Hughes with 2 points would become the Canucks franchise leader in scoring among defensemen, a mark that he is going to double if he stays with the Vancouver Canucks. I think Edler's career high is 409 points. Maybe an offseason topic. Does Quinn Hughes hit 1,000 points? Not many defensemen have done that ever. Quinn Hughes has the ability to do that, and he's still a big reason why I'm believing that the Canucks can win a Stanley Cup here in the 2020s. I'm Trevor Beggs. Time to get out of here on Locked On Canucks after an update about my co-host, Kyle Bowen. Nice to see that Kyle still missed here, and Lane Stanley in the comments saying, where the F is Kyle? Well, here's the latest update from Kyle. Kyle, apparently he bought a house, and here's the photo of his home. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, that's right. It's made of sticks and rocks. Kyle, you okay, buddy? Or like Kyle Bauno. He stopped making these tens of dollars here on Locked On Canucks. Now he's become a straight up hobo. So yeah, I'm gonna try to get Kyle Bauno on here at least to do a season wrap up show on Locked On Canucks. Maybe sign him to a 1-day contract, and then we'll go from there. But I do know for now I'm getting out of here. So shout out to you and you and you for tuning into Locked On Canucks. I would appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. Hoping to have Kyle Bauno on later this week, and a couple topics that are on my mind. Should the Canucks trade Filip Chytil, the sneaky trade candidate that no one on the Canucks is talking about? And also, does it make sense for the Canucks to trade or sign a center this season? We'll do a bit of a deep dive there as well. Also touch on the Canucks game against San Jose Sharks tonight. End of season media availability coming up. And I'll be coming up soon here on another episode of Locked On Canucks.
Your Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.